He's in camouflage right now. Dan Rivas is here, former international man of mystery and investigator. And,
former. I'm glad you got
still up to something, I think. But and Gilbert Garcia is here. He writes for PlazaDeArmas.tx.com and will be the author of a forthcoming book about the Reagan-Ford primary battle here in Texas in 1976. So if you're a political junkie, and we have a lot of those listening, this sounds like a really great read. Whether you were here for that or not, you'll want to relive those days. I want to, you pull on your headphones because you'll want to hear this. I want to play this clip. There's probably nothing that got more response on our show this week than this. Actor Matt Damon was at a Save Our Schools rally. His mother is a retired teacher. And he gave a speech in which he attacked standardized testing, and he praised public schools, and we need, you know, to get away from this ruthless, results-oriented, free market approach to education. We obviously need to pay the teachers more. He gets questioned by a libertarian reporter from Reason.com, and Matt Damon gets a little Jason Bourne with her. Listen to this. By the way, the crappy salary that he was referring to, most recent numbers from the Department of Education, the average teacher makes $54,000 a year. I don't think that's a crappy salary, is it?
That's why Hollywood elite, you know, and they were a big part of Obama's campaign, and very condescending to everyone that ever questioned. But the guy, what, makes $10 million a movie or whatever?
What does he make, Taylor? Is it $10 million a movie?
Then he's talking.
It's in the millions, right?
He's talking down to this lady about the issue.
Well, what if he had said, "I don't think we pay teachers. I don't think we appreciate teachers as much as we do, or I don't think we value teachers as much as we do, or maybe we ought to spend more of the dollars in public education on teachers rather than on palatial new schools or football fields." Right. I mean, maybe that would be one thing, but I don't know. I don't think 54,000 sounds crappy or bleepy or whatever word you want to use. You know, that isn't the problem.
Who's Matt Damon?
Thank you. Very good point.
I mean, it's funny because one of his movies was Good Will Hunting, and the Good Will Hunting story was based on, he was a janitor at Harvard. Yeah. And he basically self-educated himself, right. And he sort of defied the whole educational system, and he shirked at the need to be taught. You know, so it's funny, you look at that in the irony to it of what he did up there when he was talking to that teacher. I mean, it was, yeah. I didn't quite understand it because his mother's a teacher, you know, and you would think he'd be very supportive of it, but maybe misunderstood what the lady was saying, because the way I looked at it, he was browbeating her, you know, over something that he should. It just didn't make sense. His point,
I mean, his basic point is it's a tough job and no one would do it unless they really loved it. I was a public school teacher for 1 year, and you know, the pay is decent, but it's you know, it's a very tough job. There's no doubt about it. But you know, he may be a self-starter. He may be motivated to do his job out of a pure love of acting, and there are many teachers like that. But I saw some, and I think we all have encountered this. There are plenty of people in the profession who do it, just as in any other profession. They do it because maybe they couldn't think of anything else to do at that point, or maybe they were just at a point in their life where I don't know, and so maybe I'll go into education. There are lawyers who do that. They couldn't figure out what to do. They ended up going to law school, and there are definitely people who are teaching in public schools who don't love it and are doing it because this is just, it's a way to make a living. And I think that his argument that why would anybody do this unless they just really love to teach.
What I heard people saying about it was, everybody who called heard something different. And some people heard appreciation of teachers. Some people heard the idea that he's out of touch and he's an elitist, and what does he know about the real world? And maybe to him 50 grand is nothing, but to most people 50 grand would be a very comfortable income. You can have a home, you can have a car, you can do a lot with 50 grand. I just think we tend to simplify the debate over public education in terms of teacher pay. That seems to be 90% of the argument, and yet I've heard this my whole life, that we don't pay them enough. It sounds like we finally do pay them enough. So now if we're still not getting the result, can't we move this discussion on to something else? Can't we talk about whether they have enough autonomy, or class size is too big, or but all I hear is we don't pay them enough. Will there ever be enough?
Because it's a simple way of approaching it. I mean, I think when you talk to teachers, the things that really frustrated teachers, and in my experience,
we had the healthcare debate, Gilbert. People didn't say we don't pay nurses enough.
That's true.
Everybody understands that these other things are more nuanced, there's more detail to it than that.
That's right.
For some reason, we equate our dissatisfaction with public education outcomes. We think, oh, it must be because we don't pay the teachers enough.
Or we just think, oh, it's such a horrible job that we've got to just pay them something really, outrageously high to make up for it. And that's not really necessarily the solution. The solution is try to make the job better, to try to create a more creative or stimulating environment for them and for the students.
Isn't it true that when you ask teachers what they really like, they start talking about classroom management, they'd like support from their administrator when they kick a kid out of their class, they'd like the principal to have a spine and stand behind them, they'd like parents to not always take their kid's side when there's a disciplinary issue, and maybe see if your kid actually did his homework.
Class size.
So why does a Matt Damon, who has a bully pulpit, people listen to him, why are we still hearing, I've been hearing this for 40 years, we don't pay them enough. It's a bleepy salary. And I've asked the question many times, what would be enough? Just tell me. I'd like to know. Maybe we can get there. But no one has the answer.
And I guess one argument for this is that if you paid them much more, that it would maybe motivate people who would never consider education to go into the profession, and maybe we'd get more talent.
Or it could attract more of those clock watchers.
That's true. And I don't know what the answer is. I guess that's one argument you could make. But I agree with you. The real problem, I never had a day when I was teaching when I thought, when I really thought that much about the money issue. The frustrations were all about other things.
When it comes to liberals, there's just one thing to remember. Believe none of what you hear and half of what you see.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
And, who wants to listen to Matt Damon anyway?
Well, it's the thinking, though. This is what
I understand that. That's the problem.
This is what Wisconsin was about. This is every debate at every level of public education. I don't know of any other profession. Everybody would like to make more money. I'm sure, Gilbert, you think journalists should be paid more. But I don't know of any other profession where people so routinely state as a truism that teachers should make more money.
I never.
It's stated as if you'd have to be an idiot not to agree with that.
That was the biggest debate we had at the state, is dealing with educational cuts. The teacher unions were very powerful. We would have our inboxes filled with folks saying that, how dare you talk about cutting teachers or allowing the school boards the flexibility to change the contracts to lower what they're going to offer entry-level teachers. And I think that it came down to what it did in Wisconsin and Ohio, that basically we didn't have the revenue, and there is a supply and demand issue. And if you look at these different school districts, there is a ton of people trying to get jobs there because they got benefits, and they will pay them somewhere in the $42,000 range. It should be treated just like it does in the private sector. You will have people that are willing to work for that position based on what the compensation is, and it shouldn't be any different. And I fully respect. My third grade teacher called me, and she was a principal, and she called me and she says, "How dare you make these cuts to education?" 60% of the Texas budget is education. And I think that just giving people flexibilities at the school boards to determine classroom size, determine if they can furlough teachers, talk about what that cap is on salaries for folks, and then also being able to look at seniority and dismiss that in looking at rehiring teachers. the school boards can make those decisions, and I think that the state governments and the federal government have imposed mandates on schools for a number of decades now, that it's become top heavy. It's been burdened with a lot of issues that it is in the way of educating kids, and discipline's another issue about how we're gonna take these kids. And when we were growing up, it was real simple. The teacher just had to look at you, and you knew that you were in trouble. Now they look at the kids, and the kids, have a lot of them have bad attitudes, and
I don't think that's because teachers were different. I think the system was stacked in favor of the teacher was in charge of the classroom, and like the captain of the ship.
Right.
And now, that is not the case.
And Lyle used the key word a minute ago: teacher unions. I think teacher unions have totally destroyed the education of this country, because you've got a few top-heavy teacher unions who they're not watching out for the general population of the teaching corps. They're watching out for their jobs. Just like here in San Antonio, when I retired from the Navy, I did go to work for SAISD for about 3 years, not as a teacher, but my job was to save the school district money, finding out who all the
Fakers.
and all that other stuff were that were on workers' comp. And I
Imagine having him on your tail.
I did my job. I did it well.
I'll bet.
Did it so well that I didn't have a friend in the whole teacher union system. But the point I was trying to make is that everything gets top heavy. When I first went to work for them, there was one assistant superintendent in 1991. I understand now there's at least probably more than half a dozen assistant superintendents. Why do you need so many assistant superintendents?
So if you want to pay teachers more, find
job.
that money in the current education spending. If you believe that they're more valuable than other things, then find the money.
It's in the spending, yeah. There's plenty of places I can find the money. Trouble is, living in Wimberley these days, I can't even find my way home. So,
well, that's a separate show, Dan. We'll have to talk about that another time. We need to take a break here. Come back with the lightning round on Gang of Four with Dan and Lyle and Gilbert. It's 11:25. Here's Karen.
That's a separate show.
It's 11:30 on News Talk 550 KTSA. It's time for the lightning round on Gang of Four. Gilbert Garcia, Dan Rivas, Lyle Larson. And let's start with this. August 19th is the day that San Antonio's smoking ban takes effect. This week, the owner of Fast Eddie's Billiards, they have 5 locations here, he has them all over the state, he predicted he will lose $1 million right off the bat with the smoking ban. He says he bases that on his experience in other cities where he has a single establishment and they did a smoking ban, like College Station, Beaumont, San Angelo. He says it's going to be $1 million hit. Mayor Castro says, I think you're wrong. I think you'll find you have as many, maybe even more customers when your pool halls are smoke-free. So who's right?
I think the business owner is probably closer to the truth. The reason being is you've got a lot of communities around San Antonio that don't have smoking bans, so their clientele will move into those communities and frequent those establishments that are developed.
But $1 million? Sounds like such a round number. It almost sounds kind of made up.
Well, I think maybe he threw that out just for sensationalizing the issue. Yeah, but I think that there will be an impact in some of those establishments. But this is the trend. I think 30 of the major urban communities in the state have gone smoke-free. There was an initiative to try to get a statewide ban on it, and people were it's a private properties issue, a rights issue, and that's why the legislature didn't impose it. It's a local issue, and there will be some adverse impacts on some of these establishments, and some people will be happy, from a health standpoint.
Yeah, I agree with Lyle. I think it'll have an impact. I think definitely people will find other places to go where they can smoke. But I have no way of knowing, but $1 million sounds pretty
That's
high.
A lot of smoke.
Yeah. I agree. I believe in the private property angle, but I have to say, now that it's happening, I think people are going to just go play pool and smoke later. I don't truly believe everything in life is an either-or choice. Oh, if I can't smoke, then I'm not going to play pool anymore. I don't buy that. We shouldn't have done it, but I think these businesses will by and large be okay.
We had a statewide